Welcome. We are here with Hannah. Oh, not yet. Are we live?
Now we're live.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, we are live with Hannah Judson. I'm Beth Whitney, and a few weeks back, gosh, maybe it was months, I don't know. I had a chance to talk with Hannah about my new album, Into the Ground, and just what's going on with life and everything. And at the end of the conversation, it was so fun. We were like, hey, let's turn this around. I want to interview you now. So we found a good time, and here we are. Welcome, Hannah. Thank you for hosting this on your. It's kind of backwards, but it's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. Thank you for asking me, because this was your idea, and I just thought this is a great idea. And as it's turned out, this has been a busy summer, and I've had a few weeks off from podcasting. And so this is kind of like a nice like podcast touch base and sort of re-entry into that world.
Yeah. Oh, good. So what have you been up to then in the last few weeks? Podcasting. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, so since we last spoke, so it's summer. It's August 1st, and which I can't believe. I'm shocked, like how strangely time has moved this particular summer. We're in our second summer of the pandemic, and that definitely affects time and everything as things move forward. So what I've been up to is sort of like busy, quiet life with my activities, and those activities include, one thing I'm doing is I'm training for a triathlon, and I've been training for a while, and the triathlon is in October, so training is getting real, and I have a schedule. I train 6 days a week, and I don't miss a session. I don't miss a day, and this is nothing I've ever done before. And so this past year I've learned how to ride a road bike. I've learned how to clip in. So you wear little cleats and you clip in, and you can't just like pull your foot off. You have to clip out, I've learned how to swim. I mean, I knew how to swim, but I took some lessons to actually that. And I learned how to use data that you collect on your watch to really change your behavior in the moment. So so when I'm running, because I always ran, but I never really liked the idea of collecting data or using data. It was always like kind of too much. I run for pleasure. I run for, psychological downloading. It's, it was sort of like a meditation. But I've learned how excellent it is to wear a watch that tells you what your heart rate is, and to tell you all sorts of information that you can use to understand sort of where you are in your run. So I've learned about that. And the triathlon is, the triathlon is the third weekend in October in Lanzarote. So the training gets quite complicated this month. This is the month of the big train.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've borrowed my husband's Apple Watch before, and it will like say, tell you your heart rate. And I can always look at that and be like, oh, I'm not really I could probably go a little faster or like push it.
Well, the interesting thing about the heart rate is that it tells you, it kind of reminds you where you are more than the distance you've gone or the speed that you're going, because I've sort of learned like what my comfort zone is, like where I'm really comfortable and I could really go for a long way. And so I've also learned where I really am pushing it. And I know that I only have a couple minutes in that heart rate. And so I know now, rather than so I know I can push it. And if I can then just sort of pull it back a little bit to my long-term heart rate, I don't have to stop or rest, or I don't have to be so dramatic about it. It's just sort of like having more refined tools.
The pace yourself. You can like digitally and very technically pace yourself, because you can see it and feel it, and that's wonderful. That's awesome.
Taken up to some considerable headspace and actual time during this pandemic era. So that's one of my projects. But I also have got music projects, of course, going on, and podcasting, and during the pandemic, I've collected, I've written a bunch of songs. I'm gathering them together. I've got a collection of songs that are different from songs I've done before. They're not rewriting the same things, exploring different ideas, and I'm playing them a little bit differently, and I'm really happy about them. And so the next step is to record them.
Yeah.
I usually work with a producer in California, and it's just complicated. Like, I'm hoping I can get to California and work with him again, and because we have a really nice system of working together, and but that might not happen. And if that doesn't happen, how am I going to record? I'll have to figure out some other way of recording, because I think it's really important to record, wrap up an era, and then move on, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's sort of, well, I always liken releasing an album to having a baby, or whatever. You sort of, it grows and changes and then becomes ready. And then you have, you have the baby and let it grow on its own and have a life of its own. But just the completing it is such a big part. Yeah.
You have to complete it. I mean, over the course of my songwriting career, that is, so I've been writing songs for decades, and there's so many songs that just had short lifespans and were never recorded, and they existed for a while, and they were played out for a while. And that's cool to have those sort of, maybe, I don't know if they're bridge songs, bridging you from one ear to another, or just sort of placeholder songs, or whatever they are. But I do wish I had been more systematic about recording along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I do you ever find how that those songs come back around and you turn them into another song? Do you ever kind of use like a
absolutely
compost?
Exactly, absolutely. But they're never the way it was before, because you've changed and your skills have changed and your interests have changed, but they definitely can launch another song. Yeah,
like a metaphor that you had some, you used in one way, but then you're like, actually, let's turn it around and make it this new thing somewhere closer to where you are now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So. Cool. Well, I wanted to, I'm very curious about your world. I mean, we have hurtling through space and time. It's just the vastness of the universe is just gigantic, everything happening. But I wanted to zoom in on your world, like what it looks like. You wake up, you walk out your front door. What does that look like? Maybe you can tell us what it looks like when you train for the triathlon. Are you nearby your home? Are there trails you like? What do you see? What does it look like?
So where I am located physically is south of Paris in the countryside. And, if this were in the United States, I would call it a suburb, because it's it's close. It's like if we were in New York or some other big city, we'd be absolutely in suburbs. But in Paris, like really quickly, you're in the countryside. Like the second you leave the city, like it's really, you're quick to get into a whole other vibe. But a lot of people who live out here do work in Paris. It's like the train is from our little train station. It's like 38 minutes into the center of the city, but we are so far away, really. And during the pandemic, a lot of Parisians have moved out here. So, which is sort of like what happened in New York to Maine, and I'm sure happened in Seattle to the countryside. Everybody wanted to get out of the city. Yeah. So we're very close to Paris and very close to Fontainebleau. Fontainebleau is the other sort of town that we're in a little village that of wonderful villages that satellite around Fontainebleau. So Fontainebleau, you might have heard of it. It's famous for a huge chateau that was Napoleon's chateau and all those other people's chateau before that. But there was military activity here and regal activity here, and then also just regular business and regular people. But one of the cool things about this area, because the king had one of his chateaus here, is that there's tons of forest, by tons of forest, I mean thousands of kilometers of forest that was the king's hunting ground. And that's state protected land. I don't know exactly who owns it. I guess the state owns it. But through the forest are thousands of kilometers of trails. So you can get a map of all the trails, and you can just cut through the forest to get through anywhere. And the forest is so beautiful. And the forest runs up to the Sun River. And so you can, as far as trails go, now, and this has happened more since we've lived here, which is 15 years, like a lot of places, the rivers have been sort of activated with trails that run up and down the riverside on both sides. But we can go for kilometers up and down and then cross bridges. And then you go into the forest, and it's stunning. I mean, the amount of green, like leaves and green pine needles and just the amount of like green canopy that you can get under if you need a shot of greenery. I mean, I think it's like really, it's the oxygen of trees. I don't even know what it is, but it's supposed to be good for you. And I do know that in Germany that there are doctors who will prescribe going out and walking in trees.
Yeah, like forest bathing or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure there's something to that. The forest
I absolutely think there's something to that. Yeah, my family's done like a backpacking tradition for like 50 years, and it started as a 9-day backpack. It's more of a 7-day backpack now, but you know, the first 3 days are like kind of miserable. You're like, you're feeling all, it's like doing a triathlon, but not training first. And so you go in the first few days, you're just like all sore muscles and bug bites. But then, as the week goes on, your soul starts to breathe. And there's definitely something to it. And I love that you have all those trails to.
So where do you guys go backpacking?
There's a lot of spots around Washington. And I mean, there you can they've done like 50 years of this, and they've never repeated a hike before. That's how many backpacking and trails there are. So it's the same. There's none like just right outside the door. Really, you have to drive, to a place. But it's wonderful. I wanted to ask you. One of my questions, one of the things I like to talk about with anybody is what color are you? Like you said green a whole bunch of times, and but what color do you sort of if you were a color, what if your bio could only be a color, what color would you put?
Do you know what's so interesting that you say that? Well, first of all, it's a bummer to have to choose just one color.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm practically wearing it as this color, but I don't wear purple a lot. I actually wear black a lot, but that's not even the best word. There must be a better word for it, but I adore amethyst color, the color of amethyst.
Yeah.
I love that color, and especially sort of a lighter amethyst. And I do really appreciate purple things from aubergine, dark aubergine. But that goes bleeds right into a full range of blues that also serve my purposes deeply. So
I see that. Yeah. And then how does that color interact with the world? And do you find a parallel in how you interact with the world? Like someone who loves yellow or feels like they would be yellow, that's like a very warming color, a very, brightening, intense color sometimes. So how do you see these like purples and blues interacting with the world? And do you feel similar to that?
Yeah. So, definitely the ocean is the biggest blue. The ocean and the sky are the biggest blues we've got. And then we've got people's deep blue eyes that we gaze into. So there's that kind of depth too. But I just think our world is just sort of cocooned in blues of great range. And I love looking at the sky. I take pictures of the clouds all the time. I try to not post them too much, because that would be like, I've got, my phone is filled with cloud pictures.
Yeah.
But they are super interesting. And the sky. And the ocean is something I miss. Living not on it, but as far as colors go, though, I think that it's normal to like have a favorite color. As kids, we're sort of taught to have a favorite color or whatever, but I think that we have all the colors.
Yeah.
Like I agree. when I think of different times of my life, or I think of different feelings or the colors that's associated with those feelings, it's
Yeah.
I use the whole crayon box.
Yeah. Yeah. You're certainly not, stuck to one. I mean, for me, it would be green, and things kind of come back to it, but there's certainly like, burnt sienna at times, or black, or like a dingy kind of dirt soil, color. And I mean, they seem to be cooler colors, but in general, but, I just think it's interesting. And I mean, you look at the world around us, and everything does have these colors, does have these different colors. And, the trees you said overhead when you're on the trails, and the dirt beneath you. And, I keep trying to understand how light, why we're seeing color, why light interacts with our eyes in this way, and the things we see. It's like one of those, I could think about that forever and ever, but.
Well, I know. And even on top of it, like, why do we see things the way we do when it's what we're looking at isn't even solid? Like, all of these solids are not actually even solids. They are energy.
Yeah.
It's
too much. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see on your side, but there's questions in the chat area.
Oh,
do you see that?
No. Let me see. Look at that. Comments. Oh, do sounds have colors for you? Oh yeah, there's like a condition too, even where people will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have that, but I would say, what do you think, Hannah?
Well, I was definitely, I do know that there is a condition where people associate very strongly, and I don't have that, but I think I could conjure up some colors to associate with some sounds. Yeah.
I think I could listen to a song and be like,
come up with a vibe.
Yeah. Bright red. Yeah. Or artists, even like, the one that came to mind is like Bruno Mars. He would be kind of like a dusty red kind of, you know what I mean? I'm trying to think, or what would Alanis Morissette, that kind of
purple.
Yeah, she's got a purple. And that was the first, when I was listening to your music, that was certainly the first thing that came to my mind, was just some of the phrasing, and even the tone has, and the songwriting style is very, very rich, very lyrical, and you're moving a lot with your voice in these really interesting ways. So I think probably, this kind of a deep purple, a textured purple, but sounds though. Yeah. A seagull cry. What color is that?
I'd say blue-gray.
Yeah. I know it, but it's a conversation. It's a conversation my sisters and I have had a lot, where we're like, what color would that person be? And we always know, like the color, and actually when I was thinking about you, that's what I thought too. It's probably purple. But I have no idea. It's like when you're tasting wine or coffee or something, and it's sort of this vague, like, what are the tasting notes? And you just have this really vague thing in the back of your mind that says cherry. And you're like, and so you confidently say like, oh, there's a cherry finish here. But like, it's so vague. That was another kind of along the same lines. Like if you were a glass of wine, or if wine's not your thing, coffee, what tasting notes would you emit? Like what would be, like leather, smoke, fruit, what kind of tasting notes do you think?
For a couple of years, I was part of a wine club here, and it was a wine club it was like a very French thing. It wasn't like a suburban wine club, like a bunch of housewives, like drinking as much wine as possible. So it was so fun because it was it was pretty traditional. I wouldn't want the people involved hearing me say this, but it's kind of a bunch of old guys. It was a bunch of older men who ran this thing. They loved wine, and they loved, it was a very French thing. And they would, every session, we did it once a month, they would have chosen 6 wines, and they would each wine got an introduction about where it's from, about the geology, the family that makes it, the history of it, the different things. And there were different themes. And sometimes there was also food that was paired with the wines.
Sure.
But it was truly built on like a love of France, a love of agriculture, a love of the history, a love of the way we do things here. And it was fun because we all brought our 6 little wine glass. Everybody had their own little wine tasting kit and of your little glasses, and the bottles of wine would get passed around, and you pour them, you pour just a taste, and you taste it, and people would describe it. And so they would call on different people to describe it. And I was always like, don't call on me. Like, don't call on me. But I found that whatever people said, I then experienced.
Sure. Yeah.
But so I was always like, it tastes like an attic, or it tastes like, dirt. I don't know. Are you allowed to say that? But I found that once it was sort of confirmed by other people, then I was like, that's how. So with taste, I don't trust myself. I need somebody else to confirm it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, especially when it's so vague, because there aren't those things in the wine. It's just this like,
exactly. Those things are not in the wine. They're in the environment of the wine. And it is like light, really. Light changes during the course of the day. Colors change based on the light that's, projected, that's available. So it's definitely fluid.
I kind of feel, do you ever feel that way when you're listening to a mix, like, of your songs? You've recorded it all, you've written all the songs, poured it into the studio, and then you're listening and you're kind of fine tuning the mix. Yeah. It's a similar feeling for me, like where you're like, I think the snare needs to be brighter. And it's in that same vague space for me where it's like, I don't know why I think that. I'm not sure. In the first mixes, it's kind of more obvious, like, well, the harmonies need to come down or whatever. But as you really fine tune it, you're like, there's this vague, and it's the same. I always need I generally want someone to confirm, like, do you find that too? Like,
absolutely.
Is it that same space for you? Like,
because initially when you're building a song, you're putting the big pieces together. You've you've gone through your poetic, process. Yeah. You've pulled your storyline together. The song makes sense. It makes sense to you in a certain way. Then you take it in the studio and it gets, again, taken apart a little bit and build with big blocks. And you're like, yep, all the big blocks. Yeah. And then it's that layer of like listening on after the blocks are in place and you've never heard it that way before. Yeah. It is a new hearing, a new listening of the song. And who's to say if it's right or wrong? It's
I don't know. Yeah, it's the vague. I taste cherry, I think. Yeah. It's earthy.
Have you ever listened to it? Somebody puts on one of your songs and you're like, you don't even recognize it, or you're like, who's that? Does that ever happen to you? Where it's so distant from it doesn't sound like your thing. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know why that would happen. But yeah, it definitely happens. And then when I clue in, I feel a little sheepish, or I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Exactly. I kind of want it to turn off because a lot of them are very personal, and I'm usually in a situation where I'm not sharing all these like like emotional thing. It's like a casual situation, and then over the top is this like emotion. I'm like, I keep that in here normally. It's either in here or in the music. So, right. Yeah. Casual space. Yeah. Yeah. Does that happen to you a lot, or is there just a few times?
It has definitely happened to me. And so like context is part of it, where it's like coming through speakers in somebody else's space. Like, but definitely when I'm done with a record, I'm done with it. I don't go back to it much. Like, especially the record, because that isn't my main process. That's not what I'm spending all my time doing.
Yeah. What are you spending all your time doing? What is that?
Playing my guitar, practicing, working with my guys, practicing with my band, and writing songs.
Yeah, the creative part.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask about just like your, the early days, like how and when did music become so integral to your life, to who you are?
Yeah.
When did that happen? And then kind of writing your first song.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
So I was in a house where there was always music playing. So I grew up around music. My parents had a wide and varied listening habits. They listened to a lot of different stuff. So I heard a lot of music growing up. I played music. I had a lot of music lessons throughout the years from early on and throughout. And whenever I expressed interest in a new instrument, my parents were pretty supportive of it. So I had support at home to learn instruments. And but songs, but it was but it was always classical, right?
Okay.
That's what kids were taught. And I was not particularly interested in learning classical violin or, I really wanted to write songs and sing songs. And it wasn't until I finished college, I remember this, I moved to Portland, Maine. I had a week of temping at an insurance agency. I got my first paycheck. I had already paid my rent for the month. I took my first paycheck and I went to Buck Dancer's Choice, which was a music store in Portland, Maine, and I bought a guitar. And I bought a Bob Dylan songbook. And I walked home on the little cobblestone sidewalk. And I already knew some guitar chords, but I plucked out a few Bob Dylan songs that I knew. And learning other people's songs was not my thing. I was like, so immediately I started writing my own songs. I don't know why, but I had been writing poetry, mostly poetry, but also I had been writing a lot for years and pretty intensely. So it sort of was part of that whole world of writing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the guitar sort of bridged that in a way. Yeah. Into songs. Oh, and then your first song, do you remember the first song you wrote? Did you write little pieces of songs or what was that?
I remember that the first song started on an E minor and I got that out of a Bob Dylan song, but I don't remember the song at all. Like I did have a notebook that traveled around with me for many years with the early songs. Yeah. But I don't know where that is.
Do you tend to write in minor, with a lot of minors, or do you, have you seen sort of a theme, or is it back and forth? Or
it's back and forth for sure. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that, because of the new songs that I've got that I'm preparing for their next, I'm preparing them to be recorded. I've got one song that I wrote, and when I wrote it, I was like, I love this song. This song is a little different than other things I've done. It speaks to me, but it's mostly, it starts with a G major and it goes to an F. It's very good. But there are some little tiny unexpected things in it. But I was playing it today and I thought, this is awful. This G to this F. Like this is so I was playing around with looking for more interesting chords. And I realized that it had to be my voice. Like I can let that stay the way it is. And it's the voice that has to pull out the journey of the listening journey. So I thought I need to make sure that I don't just sing along with those chords, that I really move in and out of them.
Yeah. Do it with your melody. That's cool. Oh, I can't wait to hear that. Yeah. I remember, well, actually yesterday we did we played a wedding and it was they wanted just instrumental, which for me is like very new. We've played a lot of weddings, a lot of events, and I always sing. That's like, the part, but it was just instrumental. And then, I could hear how simple some of those chord progressions actually are. We had a fiddle player doing the melody and I was doing more of just a underlying thing. And yeah, like you said, sometimes those chords underneath can be so simple and so straightforward. But then the melody over top, it gives a lot of room for the melody to get weird without losing the listener too.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I can't wait to hear that. I wanted to talk about, you released an album in 2020. That's Stingray. Is that the name of the album? Okay. Yeah. And I wanted to know why that title, where you got that title, Stingray. That's a really compelling.
can't
animal.
tell you. I could probably make up a story, but I can't remember right now exactly where that came from.
It's one of the songs too,
It's
right?
one of the
Yeah.
songs.
Yeah.
So, but even that song had a bunch of different titles over time. But the
Yeah.
song is about, frankly, recognizing narcissism. And the song goes through some of the stages of releasing yourself from a narcissist relationship.
Wow.
And then just being done with it. And so the song is sort of like a liberation song, but
Yeah.
Stingray actually doesn't. But I thought about like stingrays, and when I thought of it, I was like, that's the title, that's it. And it made so much sense to me. But when I think about it, I don't know. I think maybe I just liked the word a lot.
Yeah.
A stingray, and it's a great word. It's the name of an old car. They're old. Do you know those stingrays? They were like from this 1963 or something.
I'd probably
like
recognize
vintage.
it, but yeah.
If you Google, but so it's kind of got a vintagey sound to it also.
Yeah.
But a stingray, I think, is something that's really beautiful, and it can also
beautiful.
sting you.
Yes.
So there were two parts to it. Like definitely the stingrays do sort of they swim, right? But they're like flying through the ocean. So there's this sense of something moving. It's quite beautiful, also a little dangerous.
And they kind of, well, I'm like picturing Finding Nemo, which is not where, but where like there's a stingray character in there, and he's wonderful. He's like the teacher, but there's that image of where he has all the students and everything on his back, and he's collected them.
Yeah.
He's kind of collected them, and he's swimming off. And probably that's one characteristic of a narcissist too, is just sort of collecting admirers or collecting an image, the portrayed image you'd like to,
Yeah, for sure.
But no, that to me, that is right on. But I wanted to know too, if there was like a lyric in that album that you like really captures the heart of that album or that season or whatever. If there's a lyric or two, or
I would have to really think about it, off the top of my head. There are some things that I've set up in those songs that I like. There's a song, Deep Sea Diver, and it's a simple song in a way for me. And the song is about the idea is no matter where you are in the universe, there's somebody for you, and you will find each other. And there's the lyric is, if I have to, how does it go?
I know it. I know that
I was an astronaut and you were a deep sea diver. And then the story unfolds. So the idea is that there's somebody that you're way over here and that person's way down there in a different environment completely. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. You'll
meet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved that one. I saw the lyric video for that. Is it the lyric video? Yeah, you have it.
Yeah, it is
on your website. Yeah. So if people want to, we'll mention this again at the end, but if people wanted to see that lyric video or other things from you, where should they go to?
Yeah, so a couple places, but one thing is I've got a website that is sort of home base for all of my channels, but so that's hannahjudson.com. But I also have a YouTube channel that YouTube is really weird. And YouTube is always tries to control everything. And I used to have a channel with one name, and so I'm not even sure what my channel name is. I think it's Hannah Judson, but definitely if you go to YouTube and you search for Hannah Judson, my channel will come up. Yeah. But you can see videos there. And also you can see my podcast videos on the live stream conversations are on my YouTube channel. Which has been one of the really fun parts of my pandemic projects, doing these interviews and having the live stream collection of conversations, and then actually releasing podcasts for each conversation.
Yeah.
So I was realizing the other day I've got a lot of different channels and platforms, because now I've got podcast platform too. So you can find the Hannah Judson beat, which this is a version of right now on various podcast platforms. But also my music is on Spotify and everywhere else.
Sure. Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely check that out, you guys. There's, and just if you have only 3 minutes, definitely check out the Deep Sea Diver lyric video. It's one of those songs where it's hard to listen to and be cynical by the end of it. You know, if you go into it cynical, you can listen through and just remember how we are a vast universe, a vast pattern and design where it's giant, but there's these things that will interweave and do interweave, and we're not totally lost in space. There's some
pattern.
That made me think of that. Just at least in your story that you're telling, that astronaut and the deep sea diver and those the tendency or the inevitability, or I don't know what word you would put that we'd meet on the surface of the earth. I love that. But anyway, check that out. You do have a lot of platforms. You are seem like one of those people that that you're obviously abundantly creative, and not just in creating the art and the music, but let's do a podcast, let's do these different things. And I wanted you to tell me a little bit about Muse Fest.
Oh yeah.
That's another thing, that you have kind of created. And so tell me about that, how that got started, what that's like.
So Muse Fest is a music festival that amplifies women and friends of women, not just women, but people, but it is a sort of a feminist music and art and culture festival. And it really evolved over time. And I have to say that the kernels of Muse Fest started when I lived in Chicago, and I played in bands, over the 14 years that I lived in Chicago. I played in a bunch of different bands, and sometimes there are other women in the bands, but usually not. And we would play out in great Chicago venues, in skanky divey bar Chicago venues, but like in the full range all over the place. And most of the time I was the only woman on the lineup. Most of the time. And so I started these evenings at the Beat Kitchen, which was, and I think it still is, a great venue in Chicago. And I just asked the owner or whoever if I could curate evenings. And so I would curate evenings of women in music. And it was so obvious to me because I did just because I wanted to have more of a community of women in music. That was my reason for doing it. But I will tell you that was in the 90s. But those evenings were really popular. Tons of people came, and I made money doing that. That was never my intention, but I was like, I'm a producer now. Yeah. But they were always called like chick night. Oh, are you going to do another chick night? Or are you going to do another girls night? Yeah. That was what that was. Sure. So I was always like, I don't know. But I met a really interesting, great woman who was producing balcony TV in Paris, Zeb Achono, and she lives in London. And so I did a balcony TV episode with her, and I kept in touch with her. And at some point, I just thought, I want to do a music festival. I want to do a music festival. I don't want to be trying to get into other people's music festivals. I'm going to do a music festival. So I asked her if she wanted to join me in this. And it was great doing it with her because we pulled together a lot of research about women in music, about the amount of money that goes into funding. And a lot of the research was done in the UK that we were coming up with. But it is pretty crazy how underrepresented women are in the music industry. I mean, that was part of our thing. And we did one edition in 2014 in London. We did another edition in 2015 in Paris. And then I went back to grad school, and she had a couple kids, so we took a few years off. But last year I did an online version, 2 days of music and poetry and readings and dance and a variety of things. And we did it all online. And it was interesting.
Was that harder to orchestrate when it was all online, or was it, I mean, is it simpler? How was that different from the live version?
Actually, in a way it's easier because, but it's a high admin situation where you send out the invitations, you organize the thing, you get the timing, you make sure everybody has what they need. So it was a lot of admin, but it worked. And I definitely would like to do it again in person.
Yeah.
There are a lot more logistics in person because you have to have a relationship with a venue, and that can be good or bad. You know.
People have to eat, there's
all that.
Stay somewhere, and that makes sense. Well, and you and your podcast, just getting back to your podcast, so you've interviewed a lot of people, a lot of women, and I was wondering if you've been surprised by any like common themes, common threads throughout those conversations. Like, are these what do you notice is brought up a lot? Anything common?
It is so interesting that you ask that, because there are common threads that run through where like one interview picks up on another. But I think that in the past year, because I started the conversations in October of last year, and I started them informally and as part of what I was calling a backwards record release for Stingray, where I was just inviting my friends to come online and have a conversation or have a drink with me online or whatever. And then it turned into a podcast, and I officially started the podcast January of this year.
Sure.
But I find that people are talking about how they are managing themselves right now, how it is, like what is important right now. I think that, this is an era of reflection for sure about, so it's not just all career and what I'm going to do next. And although that's part of it too, but the question is, what am I going to do next for a lot of people? Yeah. I think that, so that came up in every podcast. Yeah. That we're in something right now. I would say that one theme that came up that several people talked about was what makes music successful, or what is a successful result. Yeah. And the result that works is that you've translated an emotion and it connects to somebody. It's it's not the words. Yeah. It's the emotion. It's how people feel. So that you feel, you create this thing, you send it out in the world, somebody connects to it, and they feel. Yeah. And that's different people said that in different ways. And that was one thing I noticed. I think.
Yeah. Do you think that's sort of the role of an artist in general? I mean, even visual art, would you say that's the main impetus, is to help people feel what they might already be feeling, or what they've...
I think that's a really good question. I'm not sure there's an answer to that question, because I think that people make art, whatever it is, for different reasons. Sure. And I think a lot of people would never think anything about this is to help somebody else. No. Yeah. I don't think that's because I think that when you're an artist, you are working with the materials or the skills or the world you have. You're working with what you have in a way that you've been trained. And there is just sort of this need or this impetus to do something. Yeah. I think that is at its for on the artist side, there is a need to say something with these materials. I don't know why people make art, but it's that, like, we are programmed to, I mean, not programmed, but we do make art. Every single culture ever made art.
Yeah, I know. And you're right. It's such an odd, and I think you're right that you are, the job or the essence or something of being an artist is to create. And if you're thinking too much about the consumption of the creation, you can hear that. You can hear that in a song, like, this was made to sell or something, you know, like
Oh,
you can
for
kind
sure.
of,
When you think of various artists, I won't name any names, but
no, of course
there
not.
are wonderful artists who had a first release that was fabulous,
Yeah.
and then a second hit, good, and then a third hit where somebody got their hands on the artist and they're like, you need to make a commercial hit, right?
Yeah.
So you can see that, you can see when they're like, okay, my songwriting is going to be for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
So you can see when that original person, and then they get back to their
Yeah, it seems like there's the freshman album, the sophomore album, and then the junior album can be sometimes, they all of a sudden all their songs are co-written, which is fine and good and wonderful, but
with
I
the
know,
purpose to get the hit.
yeah,
You can see when somebody's aiming for that because there's a formula, and it's not that interesting.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's true. I know. It's an interesting, having it be a business is odd. I think a lot of artists have to reconcile that. And I'm curious what, I don't know, did you learn, like in that original kind of Bob Dylan book, was it just on songwriting? Was it like his songs and then the chords, or was it?
It was the piano music and the guitar chords and the lyrics.
He seems like someone uninterested in the commercial aspect of like, of like making a commercial hit or something. I mean, he seems like that to me, but yeah, I'd be curious what he would say about all of that. He's probably said things, just gotta find it. But yeah. Go ahead. Well, I was going to ask more about Bob Dylan, like if there were songs of his you liked in particular, but you go ahead and say what
I was just going to say about what you were saying. He was writing his songs. He had things to say. Bob Dylan had stuff to say, and he still does. And along those lines, so did Leonard Cohen, who is another songwriter I really love. And and I think that, and some of his songs are truly weird. You have to listen to them and a few times he is writing his songs, and that is that. And certainly they had financial worries or concerns or interests. The one does in life, but I do admire people who are doing their thing at a high level. And that's kind of my goal in life, is just to not, to keep learning about how to do it, but to be confident that my songs, they can be weird. They can be clear. They can be major. They can be minor. They can be also, but that they are coming from a place where I'm not trying to squeeze them into somebody else's definition of what I should be doing.
Yeah. It's a weird industry. Like, even songs themselves, I think about that sometimes, like, what is a song anyway? Like, what an odd piece of art. Like it doesn't, it exists because it works, and we make it, and we make songs. That's just what we do. We sing together, we sing alone. That's just part of it. I've been getting into foraging a little bit, and so I'll be out in the woods and just looking for different, looking to see what's out there right now and what I could use. And I found I really just want to sing during that time. And sometimes it's not even like English or, or a language I know. It's just sort of, there's melodies and there's emotions and things. And, and it feels very primal in that situation. Because I'm just there, picking things and looking at things. And, but it always makes me think back, like you said, people have been creating art forever. And what did that look like before? What did
do you know, one thing when you were talking about songs, I was thinking how one thing about songs generally, mostly always, something repeats, something, and it's not, now we talk about the hook. What's the hook? Where's the hook? But it doesn't need a hook. Like Gregorian chants didn't have a hook. They did, you don't have to have a hook.
Yeah.
But something pulls you in. It creates an environment, and there's usually a repetition in there. And I think it's like, it's sort of like, I mean, why songs work. I mean, they definitely seem to need to repeat. Like you come back to something you're comfortable with, and it takes you through a little journey. It's like waves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of a neat mystery. I kind of don't want to know. I kind of don't want to know the answer. There's probably some.
There probably is some absolutely in physics.
It'd be fascinating, actually. Yeah, like on the cellular level, or physics.
I pulled out a song the other day. I mostly work on my own songs, but I do pull out other people's songs if I'm thinking about it for one reason or another. I'm like, I'm still thinking about the song, so I want to figure that out. Yeah. But there was a song that my parents listened to that was on a reel-to-reel tape that they had, and it was a song that I originally heard. It's a folk song, and it was this. My version that I grew up with was Gordon Bach, who's a Maine folk singer, but it's a song that is a 16th century folk song, and then it came over to America. Different people worked on it. It's evolved and changed, but I think Bob Dylan had his hand in there. Joan Baez sang it, and so I Googled it and I listened to a version of Joan Baez, which was so different from the other. And a lot of people have done it, but this song it's called "I'm a Rambler and a Gambler." Do you know that song?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll look it up.
I have that embedded in my childhood brain, and it's a super sad song, and I loved that song. About I'm a rambler, I'm a gambler. So I'm playing that one now because it struck a chord when I was like 7 years old, and it still strikes a chord now.
I had this thought for me was I saw my. I guess it was my mom's cousin. Anyway, she had a guitar and she had this real gravelly kind of jazz voice, but she sang "Leaving on a Jet Plane."
Oh yeah,
by John Denver, and it's a very it's certainly like a common song, but that one totally made a place in me for sure.
Yeah, I remember that song when that came out. That was.
I'm getting over a cold, not COVID, but okay. I have one more question. If I can get it out, I didn't get water. Sorry. Water. It's like stuck right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
No worries.
Tell me what's next.
Okay.
And tell me where people can find you. And then, then I need water.
Okay. Okay. Do you need to go cough?
I'll go. Yeah, I'll go get water.
Okay. All right. So I'm Hannah Judson. And so what is coming up next is I was talking about the songs that I've been writing and working on. In one way or another, they're going to be recorded. I'm either going to be working with my producer in California, or we're going to get some of the songs recorded here. But I think what we're going to be doing is releasing a song at a time. And then once everything's been released, scoop it all up and then release like a year or two from now, an album. So that's something I'm working on. I've started to try to look into booking shows. Some places are open, some places are not open. I mean, regions, things in Paris are opening up, but it's all still a little, I'm a little hesitant about booking there, but that's like on my to-do list. I'm going to book some shows in the US at some point later this year or in the spring of next year. That's something I'm working on. I've sort of changed the format of my newsletter. I used to send out a regular newsletter with little updates, but I'm just, I've put that format to the side, and now I'm just sort of writing a letter. So I've got a letter. It's not really a newsletter anymore, but if you want to hear that, there, welcome back.
Thank you.
So I was just talking about my newsletter. Do you do that? Do you collect email addresses and send out a newsletter?
I do. I don't send them out very much though.
Yeah. there's so much information about newsletters, and you're supposed to be doing it. And initially, when I initially started making a newsletter, I was like, this is so much fun. And I sort of did it in a magazine format, and I had interviews with friends, and I did all this
Cool.
stuff, but it was like way too much work.
It's so
I was
much
like,
work.
I cannot make a magazine. So then I started just doing updates of my own thing. And then I'm like, I'm not interested. It does not interest me to talk about that I've got a show here and a thing there. Why would it's just not that cool. So I was always struggling with what to do with the newsletter. And then I decided, and I've done one edition of my new format. And my new format is just to write a letter, like to just write a letter to whoever's receiving my thing about what's going on. And I had much more fun writing a letter than putting together click here for this and click there for that. And,
I love that, because it seems to harken back to your original kind of, before you even wrote songs, you were just writing. You're writing poetry and writing. And it kind of brings it back to that. You take out all the shows and announcements, and it's like writing a letter. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good way to think of it.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested, you can sign up for my letter, not my newsletter, but my letter on my website. In the footer, I think there's a place to sign up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for being here on your podcast and letting me ask you some questions and dive a little deeper into your story and your artistry and your just your gifts to the world. It's I love what you're doing. I love that you are creative, not just in music, but in connecting people and showcasing others. And it just shows an abundance that I hope is contagious for people. I hope other people see, how can I create an evening of, to celebrate artists, and how can I help draw other people's stories out? And that's a beautiful thing that we could use more of. So thank you for what you're doing. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you. That's really nice to hear. I appreciate that. So thank you for having this idea to just sort of flip our chairs. That was fun for me. And I've got to get back into podcasting, but in due time. I think it's okay to take the summer off, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, we'll see you next time.
Yes. Oh yeah. What do I say at the end? This is your.
Yeah, you did a nice thank you, and then you wrap it up in some way and sort of close it out.
Okay. Well, this was Hannah Judson and Beth Whitney sharing a little bit about music and inspiration and colors and everything music and art. So thank you for being here, and be sure to check out Hannah's work on her website and all of those areas where you can hear music and learn more. So thank you for being here.